We're speaking with Dr. Armando Mirande, independent poultry consultant based in Texas. He has clients in the U.S., Mexico, South America, South Africa, and the Middle East. The emphasis of his consulting practice is on avian influenza and velogenic Newcastle disease. Dr. Mirande, you told a crowd here at the Poultry Production and Health Seminar today that the causes and possible solutions to the avian influenza problem in Mexico are not what are typically addressed by the government and industry.
That's right, Gary. Thanks for inviting me to talk to you and your readers. There is a persistent and predominant movement of products and byproducts in the Mexican poultry industry. For example, there's about 10 million live broilers going into Mexico City from different regions in the country every week. And there's also a systematic movement of broiler litter from many regions to the north, where a lot of the beef cattle gets raised for export into the U.S. It's a very dry area, so they cannot rely on their own pastures, so they definitely need that litter as a byproduct as a feed ingredient. And there's also a systematic movement of spent hens, heavy spent hens and light fowl from the north and central part of the country into the south, where these products have a premium price. So all this movement of products and byproducts make it very difficult for the country to put a control on this disease like avian influenza and others.
Well, you had 3 takeaway messages that you delivered to your audience here today. Could you tell us about those?
Yes, what I wanted the audience to take home with them is 3 points that I think are very important. Number 1, the risk of disease introduction into the U.S. from Mexico, whether it's avian influenza in its low path or high path form, or velogenic Newcastle disease or any other disease. That's 1. Number 2 is the potential litigation that can arise from unfair labor practices, as the U.S. industry relies heavily on a workforce of workers that come and go to Mexico on a regular basis. I already seen some companies dealing with this very differently. For example, I know for a fact that veterinarians working for a primary breeders are not allowed to visit their own pedigree birds only after a 7-day downtime after they have visited a country where disease is endemic. However, there are some integrators in the U.S. that will request at least 3 weeks for a worker like working in a vaccinating crew, whether it's owned or contracted, 3 weeks before they can go and be in contact with these companies' pullets. There's no basis, whether scientific or logistic, for these measures, but we already seen this. And the industry needs to be very careful how to deal with what is potentially an unfair labor practice of prohibiting workers visit their family in Mexico. And the third point I want to leave is whether this combination, that is very strange by the way, of a very serious outbreak that brought the most profitable years to companies both in Mexico and the U.S. could modify the criteria that the industry has in the U.S. when it comes to disease tolerance. We know for a fact that there were a series of broiler breeder flocks that were positive to MG and or MS that normally would have been slaughtered under MPIP provisions that were kept alive because the market of exporting hatching eggs into Mexico was so profitable. I'm worried that a low-path AI can come into the country, and because it's really subclinical, and if the right combination of mild disease and high profits come into play again, the decision may be to leave these chickens alive. And low-path AI is close to impossible to eradicate, and we've seen this in many countries around the world where it's endemic.
Well, your first point, possible introduction of disease into the U.S., is kind of related to that third point in a way, isn't it? What were the bottom line conclusions that you offered about that possibility?
Well, I don't know of any products other than a few fresh eggs imported into the States from the state of Sonora in Mexico, which I believe is completely clean of any of these mentioned diseases. And other than that, I don't think there's any products coming from Mexico into the U.S. That will be a point of risk, which I think is right now either non-existent or very, very small. The byproduct movement into the U.S. is prohibited. So that leaves only people, and just like we saw during the 2005, 2004 outbreaks of H5N1 high path in Southeast Asia, the movement of people brought that virus all the way north into Denmark in the middle of the winter, where migratory fowl could not be blamed. There has never been a documented case of AI introduction into commercial poultry from waterfowl, but I do believe people movement could be risky if those people work in a commercial poultry environment in Mexico, as opposed to just going and have casual contact with the occasional backyard bird in their families and at home. I've tested many backyard chickens in my years in Mexico, and they were never positive.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Dr. Mirande.
You're welcome, Gary. Thank you.